This is a dark time in America. We have a lot of problems, and we're really, really hopeful and prayerful. Prayer is appropriate in a time like this, that the evil can end and this senseless violence can stop.
Well, that was newly elected Speaker of the House, Mike Johnson, commenting on last night's deadly shooting in Maine. House Republicans elected Johnson yesterday. The Louisiana Republican was their fourth nominee for Speaker during the 3-week search after Kevin McCarthy's historic outing. In his first act as Speaker of the House, Johnson called up a resolution declaring U.S. support for Israel. That overwhelmingly passed with bipartisan support. Johnson now has through November 17th to try to reach a government funding deal to avoid a shutdown. CBS News congressional correspondent Nikole Killion joins us now from Capitol Hill. Nikole, you've been watching all of this. Let's talk about the potential for a government shutdown, which is ticking. And I'm wondering if Johnson signaled what his plan is to try and avoid it.
Well, he did lay out his thoughts in a letter to his colleagues earlier this week, where he would ideally like to move forward with a very aggressive schedule to try to pass the remaining appropriations bills that need to be passed in order to fund the government on a long-term basis. But if they're not able to get that done in the next 24 days, he did express a willingness potentially to move forward with a temporary spending package, much like we've seen before, these continuing resolutions that could go either through January or April of next year. And for now, it seems that Republicans may be willing to give him a little bit of that latitude, just because even though that was ultimately one of the death knells for former House Speaker Kevin McCarthy in terms of moving forward with CR earlier this fall. In the case of Mike Johnson, again, they've lost a lot of time in this speaker's battle, and so it may or may not be realistic to try to get all those appropriations bills done in such a short period of time. So they might be willing to cut him some slack this go round if a temporary package is needed.
Well, and Nikole, some New York Republicans are now looking to expel fellow Republican George Santos. Talk to us about why they're pursuing this action now, and how likely is it to be actually successful?
Well, again, that's another kind of big open question. We know these members of the New York delegation would like to move forward with this expulsion resolution. They introduced it during this speaker stalemate, so they are anxious to move forward. We don't really know exactly just yet how Speaker Johnson may come down on this. Former Speaker McCarthy is one of the ones who tried to expedite an ethics review into Congressman Santos, although we are still waiting for the outcome of that review and investigation. But, keep in mind, George Santos, whether people like it or not, can be a very critical vote for House Republicans in the sense that they have a very narrow majority. And so if he were to be expelled, that means that Republicans lose a critical vote, and that shrinks their margin even further when it comes to passing critical legislation. So will Speaker Johnson kind of kick the can down the road, buy a little bit more time, with this, or will we see something like this resolution gain more momentum among members? Again, that kind of remains to be seen as we kind of get back into this period of legislating, but something we'll continue to watch.
Back to business. And also, there's a dozen Republicans who are co-sponsoring a resolution to try and censure another New York congressman. This time it's for Democrat Jamal Bowman, who set off that false fire alarm during the government funding vote last month. I'm wondering how this is going to affect his position in Congress.
Well, also, this is another issue where it's something where you have a lot of Republicans clamoring for him to potentially be censured. But as many know, Jamal Bowman is pretty outspoken, and he did plead guilty earlier today to pulling that fire alarm. He has agreed to pay a fine, write a letter of apology to the U.S. Capitol Police, and I think in doing that hopes to kind of move forward and away from this situation. He has suggested that, this was something that was not intentional, even though it occurred at a very tense time as Congress was trying to pass a temporary funding bill last month, but he feels that he has kind of made amends. He's pled guilty and hoping to put this behind him, but that may not quiet his critics.
All right, Nikole Killion, thank you.
You bet.